Hello everyone. This is the first time I've used this AI avatar. It's pretty much just temporary, but I don't know how long I'd have it. But I thought I'd do like kind of a weird one because I know that there's been a lot of controversy with Kurt Cobain. The fact that he might not have actually committed suicide. It's kind of difficult anyway because I think it was a shotgun, wasn't it? But I haven't really looked that much into it. But I'm gonna react to a Tozy's video, and add commentary in that. But see if this is any good. I've watched quite a lot of Atozi's videos, so I can imagine it is, but and I don't know why it started in this way, but play it.
30 years ago, Kurt Cobain's passing was ruled to be self-inflicted, but now forensic experts are saying, hey, this might have all been staged.
More than 3 decades after his death shocked the music world, questions are once again swirling around the final hours of Kurt Cobain.
How is it toxicology at this point? I've not actually looked at anything into it. I've just heard like a glance and thing, but how is toxicology moving forwards? It's been 30 years, but he died the year before I was born, I think. Like, basically 31 years ago. But it's like, how? Like, how is toxicology coming forwards with it? Unless it's something to do with drugs. Maybe had way more drugs or something. But even so.
Nirvana's lead singer was found dead April 5th, 1994, inside of a greenhouse above his Seattle garage. And Seattle police, they closed the case after the King County medical examiner ruled it suicide, citing a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Shotgun wound, to be even more specific. So why am I talking about it now? Well, an unofficial private team of forensic scientists says the evidence tells a very different story.
And I mean, this case has been closed for longer than I've been alive. But in April of 1994, Kurt Cobain was found unresponsive in his Seattle home. A firearm injury was discovered, and authorities ruled it a self-inflicted one.
As I said as well, with it being a shotgun, that's kind of more difficult. Shotguns are typically long, depends on if it's sawn off. You can do it, obviously, if you have it towards your like legs essentially, but even so, I've never actually used a gun, so I don't even know if that's possible. But
Note was then found nearby, and toxicology reports showed high levels of substances in his system. And again, the King County medical examiner determined the manner of death was self-inflicted, and the Seattle Police Department agreed. Case closed seemingly, and that was the end of it, or so we thought at least. And look, I am no conspiracy channel, but recently there have been official news reports about a new independent forensic review of this case. And
I wonder if it's something to do with the Epstein files as well. Maybe there's some information about that, but it doesn't seem like it. I think it is completely separate to that. Obviously, it's like a third party who's looked into Kurt Cobain.
some of the claims made are strange enough where I felt like I should probably cover this. So today we're going to be going through what's being claimed and what the authorities are saying in response. Typically, I start by explaining, who the person we're talking about today is, but most people know who Kurt Cobain was. Lead singer of Nirvana and an absolute musical genius. But back in 1994, Cobain had been struggling, and we know he had chronic pain and depression. Just weeks earlier, there had been a serious medical incident overseas, and police previously removed firearms from his home after concerns of his own safety. And the medical incident we're
I've not actually looked much into Kurt Cobain in general. Like, I knew about him. I've obviously heard some of the songs. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but obviously heard of the songs. I didn't realise he had firearms taken off him earlier, but yeah, again, it makes sense. There's drugs and suicidal tendencies and stuff.
talking about involved Cobain taking an OD level amount of substances before being found by his wife Courtney. Then a few weeks later, Courtney called the police to say that Cobain was locking himself in his room with a firearm. But when police arrived, he said he was actually trying to avoid his wife. And again, both of these scenes happened just the month before he passed. And I'm mentioning them because they've been used as proof that Cobain was leading up to his passing. But they've also been used as proof that not everything was good in his home life. So on April 8th, an
So I've got cold. But yeah, again, that doesn't prove anything because obviously it's drugs. Like, it could have been anything with that, but it could just be doing drugs. I know people who've taken their own life. My brother did it at one point. My only brother, but he took his own life. Basically because of drugs and drink. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's depression caused by anything.
electrician installing security lighting discovered him in a room above the garage at his Lake Washington Boulevard home. At first, he thought that Cobain was asleep. Then he realized something was seriously wrong. Authorities later determined he likely passed away around April 5th, and a handwritten note addressed to his childhood imaginary friend was discovered nearby. And officially, the case was classified as a self-inflicted passing.
Also, that could be drug-induced, basically. Basically drug-induced schizophrenia. Because obviously, if he expected that, if he believed his imaginary friend was real, it could have obviously been psychosis triggered by drugs.
But back then, not everyone accepted that. And that was partly due to the mess that happened in the week leading up to his passing. Because for 6 days in April 1994, Kurt Cobain was missing. One of the biggest rock stars in the world was essentially completely off the radar. Police were looking for him, his wife was looking for him, and she even hired a private investigator. But on April 1st, he called Love from Los Angeles, and she later told the Seattle newspaper, he said, "Courtney, no matter what happens, I want you to know you made a really good record." And according to Courtney, that was the last time they ever spoke. He then flew back to Seattle, and on a flight, he happened to sit right next to the Guns N' Roses bassist Duff McKagan. McKagan then later said that he felt something was off. And quote, "All of my instincts told me something was wrong." After learning he left his treatment, Love canceled his credit cards and hired a private investigator, Tom Grant, to track him down. Meanwhile, Cobain was reportedly seen around Seattle on April 2nd and April 3rd. On April 4th, his mother filed a missing persons report, telling police that she feared he might harm himself. And according to the police timeline, on April 5th, he returned to his home and went into the greenhouse above his garage. He then wrote a note, he left his wallet open, possibly for identification, and then sometime around that day, he passed away. He wouldn't be discovered for 3 more days though. And almost immediately, questions started popping up. A local journalist then started doing public access segments, suggesting the case didn't make sense, with one of the main points being there just wasn't enough blood on the scene. A private investigator later said that he believed there were inconsistencies in the timeline and in the evidence. Documentaries were then made and books were then written, but by the late 90s, the story had turned into a full-blown cultural debate. Then you had a documentary created called Kurt and Courtney, which then explored the theory. Then in 2014, on the 20th anniversary, Seattle police reviewed the case again. They developed rolls of film that hadn't been processed back in 1994. They re-examined the scene photos, and once again, they reaffirmed the original conclusion. Officially, nothing changed. But here's the thing, the conspiracy never really went away. And now, in 2026, it's back. Because a new independent forensic team says they've looked at the same materials and reached a very different conclusion. And
I didn't realize there was a conspiracy theory to do with it. Like, I just heard about him committing suicide. I didn't know there was even a slight chance of it being non-self-inflicted.
this is where it starts getting weird again. So here's what's different this time. In early 2026, multiple news outlets reported that an independent research team had taken another look at the case. And I know, I'm talking about a private forensic group, but these are peer-reviewed, published findings, meaning a whole bunch of smart people who specialize in this kind of thing looked at it and gave it 2 thumbs up. So it seems short-sighted to just dismiss this. They reviewed crime scene photos, autopsy findings, and toxicology records. And after doing that, they claim the evidence fits a staged scene. Not a self-inflicted one, a staged one. That's a massive claim.
When it comes to toxicology, as I've said, that could explain everything. Because if he's on drugs, it could easily be. But obviously it's more than just that. It's the whole scene in general.
To put it lightly, Michelle Wilkins,
unless it was also like too much. Yeah, I think that's what it's saying now, where so much drugs, he should have been passed out in a coma. They wouldn't be able to even hold a gun, let alone pull a trigger.
one of the researchers, said that the forensic specialist Brian Burnett reviewed the materials for several days and concluded the death was more consistent with homicide. That is massive. So here's what they're arguing. They claim the amount of substances in his system would have left him physically incapacitated. We're talking like 20x the OD limit, so that tracks. And according to their argument, someone in that condition would struggle to coordinate movement, let alone operate a firearm. Wilkins says that Cobain would have been in a near comatose state and barely able to breathe. Secondly, they point to what they describe as oxygen-related organ damage. They argue that certain signs of the autopsy are more consistent with someone who stopped breathing due to substances rather than someone who died instantly from a firearm injury. And then they point to the scene. They describe it eerily clean. They question why his hand, which was found wrapped around the part of the firearm, didn't show any kind of visible blood splatter as they expected. Wilkins said, in quote, "There is no universe where that hand is not covered in blood." They also questioned the organization of the substance kit found nearby, saying it looked way too neatly arranged. Their argument is essentially someone under extreme physical duress would not carefully cap needles and put equipment away. They then argue that the top portion reads like someone expressing frustration about music and fame. Then they claim the final lines appear visually different.
Unless I've just thought it could be that it's gradually becoming more and more comatose, essentially. Because obviously when you drink, you don't instantly get drunk. It takes a little bit for it to get into your system. I'm a layman when it comes to this, but it could potentially make sense. That's probably one of the arguments people have made. It could just be he's not under the influence yet. And then obviously seeing that where it sort of slowly changes text. Clear at first and then gets more and more. He might have had way too much drugs, and it just kicked in over time.
Larger, more rushed handwriting, and suggests that this could indicate tampering. And I mean, that is interesting because it seems like they're implying he wrote the letter about leaving music behind and someone else added onto it. So, not gonna lie here, this looks weird. Looking at this note, I see what they mean. Suddenly, the writing gets really big and it looks a little different. But the team says they asked for the case to be reopened and authorities have responded. So the Seattle Police Department says the death was ruled self-inflicted and that remains their position. So the King County Medical Examiner's Office said they are open to reviewing new evidence, but they've seen nothing that would warrant reopening the case. So now we have two positions. The findings here are reanalysis of existing stuff that have been reviewed before. Sadly, without a new piece of evidence, they might not just be able to get the case reopened. The other side is the Seattle Police Department has had requests for this case to be reopened since the conclusion of it 30 years ago. The conspiracy side of the story has been around for almost as long as the official ruling, but a team of experts publishing a peer-reviewed analysis is still a lot more solid than 3 decades of conspiracy theories. But a lot of the stuff in the new report matches with a whole bunch of the theories that I mentioned earlier, like the public access host who said the police reports just didn't line up. He claimed there wasn't enough visible blood for what had happened, which is pretty similar to what the recent analysis said. Then you have Tom Grant, a private investigator who had been officially hired by Courtney Love during the chaos before Cobain's passing. And afterward, he publicly said that he believed the crime scene was staged. And his arguments focused on a few big things that are, once again,
and that's obviously a big question mark. As if a private investigator is saying, I think it was staged. But yeah, you should look into that.
Also in the official report. He questioned whether someone with that level of substances in their system could physically coordinate pulling a trigger. And he also questioned the lack of clear fingerprints on certain items. Tom Grant was also the guy who pointed to the things like tour money and industry contracts as financial motives. Then there's the documentaries. Nick Broomfield's film, Kurt and Courtney explored the murder theory in the late 90s. That film mentions one of the most popular theories, that Courtney Love orchestrated everything. And I mean, it could make sense that people thought that she had something to do with it, because especially during this time, they were always in the news for their music.
Also, if it is non-self-inflicted, it could easily be that a drug dealer went against him. Maybe he didn't pay somebody. Don't lie when people don't pay.
But also the relationship issues.
Reports of frequent heated arguments surfaced, some escalating to physical altercations. On March 18th, police were called to their home in Seattle after an explosive fight. Cobain had locked himself in a room with a gun, threatening to take his own life. Officers managed to de-escalate the situation and seized several firearms from the house.
Even their daughter, Frances, once said, "I always knew their relationship was toxic. I don't promote having a fix-it baby," which is what I was, to fix their problems. That is so sad for a kid to say. But there are a lot of theories as to why she would. Some people think that, she was the handler. Others point to the fact that she gained his estate after he passed. But it is also very important to mention that Courtney Love did sign over the estate to Kurt's daughter, Frances, in 2012. But as of February 2026, his passing remains officially classified as self-inflicted. So whether this new report changes anything in the future, we don't know. And look, did Kurt Cobain openly have issues with depression and substances? Absolutely, yes. But I don't think that means that we should just ignore details that look very weird. And again, in this video, we are absolutely not accusing anyone of anything. We are just looking at the public details. But regardless, someone who's thinking about taking their own life can still be hurt by someone else. Those two things don't cancel each other out. But unfortunately, no one really knows what happened to him, not 100%. But it doesn't seem like the police department is going to look into it any further.
And obviously, it's still questionable. Even if it is 100% self-inflicted, there's still some questionable stuff. Because obviously, if it was the fact that he's under the influence of drugs to that extent, it might be, as I said, it might be the fact that he's actually getting more under the influence of drugs, or it could just be somebody else, and somebody else forged it. But there's multiple explanations that could explain why it's self-inflicted and why it's not. Like, we can't know for sure because obviously we haven't been through that. But it's questionable when the private investigator says doesn't look right. I think we should investigate alternative perspectives or whatever it will be.
At least for now. And honestly, that's kind of just a painful ending that some people still struggle to accept. And that's maybe why we're still talking about it. But regardless, I'll keep you guys updated if the Seattle Police Department opens this case back up. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Yeah, good video. As I expected, really, but it's the fact that it doesn't, like, we can't prove what happened with Kurt Cobain. Like, we can't 100% because obviously it's so long ago, and it's a very difficult situation because of the drugs, because of him potentially being suicidal anyway. Plus the fact that the estate was actually given to daughter. It's like it's a difficult thing. You can't really think of why it will be, but that's my review of Atosi. And one thing I've got to say is, tell me if the model is a bit distracting. I'll modify if needed, but it is just a temporary model. It's just where I've just thought, why not create a model, use that for now, see what it looks like. But yeah, so tell me your perspective, obviously, but also tell me if the model's distracting. Tell me if there's any issues with it, whatever like that. Alright, I'm stopping this recording now. Hope you enjoyed regardless.